Stu, what is the greatest Christmas movie besides Die Hard?
You can't just say beside Die Hard. Now I've got to think about it.
I know it's a real throw off.
I'm going to go with.
Okay.
I'm going to go with
from Hans Gruber. From Hans Gruber's perspective,
okay,
I have the best.
I have a family favorite. Okay, it's been in my family for decades, and also in my wife's family for decades as well. And it's called Scrooge, and it's from the 70s. I think it was released in 1971 or 72. It has Albert Finney in it and a bunch of very, very kind of legendary British actors in it. Alec Guinness is in it. It was obviously very famous from things like Star Wars and The Lady Killers, and a few other actors from TV and movie and theatre. So I think from the nostalgia perspective, I think I would always say it's Scrooge for me.
Mine's going to be the I triple dog dare you. I triple dog dare you. Nobody turns down a triple dog dare. No one. A Christmas Story. Oh my God. Just the scene alone, right? And true story, listeners might not know this, the Red Ryder BB gun where he does all the things. When I was a kid, had a Daisy BB gun. Oh. And I thought it would be really cool with my good friend Larry at the time to see if we could sink BBs into our porch. Like we could press the muzzle to the porch and we could have like a cool pattern that we could make, except for one of those BBs ricocheted off that porch, glanced off of Larry, and then blew out our sliding glass door when I was a kid.
Nice.
So
I bet family was super happy about that.
Well, they didn't know because I set up this whole framework where I was watching Animaniacs one day from school because that's what I was doing. I wasn't outside playing with the BB gun, and I flipped backwards in my chair because the scene was so funny and just blew out the sliding glass door. My mom just learned about this about 5 years ago, and I thought she did, and she told me I knew the whole time.
They ain't stupid.
So my
parents know what's up,
the
man.
The Red Ryder with the compass. So anyways, welcome to UberCube, the podcast we discuss all things cube, but with refreshments. This is your host, Anthony Adams, calling from Houston, Texas. And I'm joined today by...
So it's just Anthony and me, Stu. Hi, welcome to the show. And yeah, like Anthony said, so this is going to be a bit of a recap / year in review kind of episode rather than discussing like, meta or a cube or something like that. We tend to, I think this is our second or third time that we've done one of these recaps. Maybe it's our second. I don't know. But we talk a little bit about our podcast because it's our podcast and we can do that. We talk a little bit about events that we've attended, future events, all that kind of stuff. Talk about our own thoughts of this year and then kind of wrap it up for the holidays.
Yeah, that's kind of what we're doing here. As Stu has mentioned, the holidays are approaching and I'm going to be traveling. I'm going to be floating around. Are we doing our back porch New Year's party? Are we doing that again? Please say yes.
Yes, we are. So it's like 3 weeks away. So I really should start planning a little better for that.
I got to really I got to get my suit dry cleaned. So like that's the type of things we got to get going, right? We've got a bunch of Christmas events. And oh my God, did you know, Stu, that there's a maximum limit that a person can look at lights? I think last week alone, this past weekend, I saw 2 cities worth of lights. And after a while, I started to realize those lights start looking really the samey after a while, but I'm probably going to go see some more lights this weekend.
Yeah, it is the season, and my wife and I do put a lot of effort into our house lights, as Anthony can attest to. Honestly, I kind of feel that I love looking at the lights, but I'll do our local, we've got a little town down the street that we'll go check out, and the lights in our neighborhood. After that, I'm kind of over it. Like, I don't need to travel around and go to every single light show or light display or whatever. I've got the ones in front of my house, so that's good for me. But I'm busy. It's the holidays.
I start feeling like Chevy Chase in Christmas Vacation, where he plugs in and hallelujah. Then after a while, I'm like, okay, cool. We've seen the lights. But we're not here to talk about lights, although we may talk about lights again as we progress.
We're going to
start
today?
out with...
Let's start with what you're drinking today. How about that?
Yeah, I probably should do that. I am in Texas right now. And I'm sorry to all my Texans, but the beer game here It's just not doing it for me, Stu. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for anybody from Texas. I've tried everything. I come to Dallas and Houston, and right now I'm having a Shiner holiday cheer. And I was really excited about this one. And then I drank it. And then I was like, okay, cool. Let's go see some lights. So I am going to go ahead and drink this as Shiner holiday cheer. Not sponsored.
Well,
I'm going to force it down, Stu. What you got?
Well, first of all, I'm not going to trash talk any entire state's beer. I am much smarter than that. But I got myself a Hidden Pipe coffee porter from the Raleigh Brewing Company. It's one of my staples. And I'm going to crack it right now because I'm thirsty.
Yeah. So we want to start out with thanking our listeners.
Yes. Let's do that.
Yeah. How about you take it away, Stu? I'll let you do it. You're excited.
First of all, let's give a huge shout out to all of our listeners, not just this year, but since the origination of this podcast, which has been going from, when did we start? May 2022?
That is correct.
May 22. It seems like a lifetime ago.
With a whopping like 100, maybe 100 downloads. I mean, I remember just being so psyched. I'm like, dude. We got like 2 downloads.
When we got into triple digits, you remember we got to triple digits and we were getting that consistently? We were so stoked back then. And now, obviously, the numbers are, very, very strong. We can definitely see that there's growth, not just in our channel. But to everybody, if you've pirated an episode, I don't know how you would do that, but if you've been a listener of our show from the beginning, or if this is your first episode, welcome. Thank you to everybody that spent time with us, whether you're at home, in the car, or wherever. We appreciate you just hanging out with us and listening to us rabble on. That's from myself and obviously from Anthony and May, who's not here today. But yeah, just a huge thank you to everybody. And this has been another year of wild ride and enjoyable for myself. I will say that I always expected me to enjoy talking about magic on the podcast with Anthony because we'd just been doing so for such a long time before we started doing this. But now it has really evolved into something that I feel really privileged to be a part of, right? And obviously May has been coming in and just schooling us basically on everything cube and magic related. But what a wonderful job she has been, and an incredible addition to the podcast. A big thank you again to everybody, and I'm excited to carry on. What about you, Anthony?
Yeah, kind of tangentially speaking, before we get into, we're going to do a little bit of stats that we don't do very often, and that's kind of cool. But one thing specifically, Stu, that I've noticed as we've done this, and this comes with time, and I would encourage anyone to do a podcast and understand kind of like the trials and tribulations of the idea. But I look back at that first one we did, and we've talked about this before, but it was, I guess it was the Swords of Fallen Favor, and we've referenced that before. And what you'll hear is kind of, it's us trying to do something we'd never done before. You and I, we talked about it. We talked on the back porch all the time, and we can read each other's body language and cues, and I can tell when you're falling, and you can tell when I'm falling. But what this podcast has kind of done, it's allowed us to harmonize, and even bringing May in, it's more harmonization, as in we can tell where the break point is in the conversation, where should we pick it up, and that can be hard to do. Like, we're doing it right now. We're doing visual cues explicitly because, like I said, I'm in Texas staring at my iPhone right now.
I will agree,
which is kind of wild and weird for me, but here we are.
It's interesting that you mention about, I have a friend of mine. I saw him for the first time, possibly since just after my wedding, and I got married almost 15 years ago. He is not a magic guy, but he is a content creator. And he's kind of random. He did some drifting, like car drifting. He made some content about that. He's made some content at his house. I've mentioned kind of my wife has always had designs on getting into content creation as well. But he said something that I think has always been kind of in the back of my mind. And he said, you know what? It doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter what you're doing. If you're doing something that you find interesting, make content of it. If you're opening a new product that you've received, if you're doing some research on something, if you're playing something, if you're working on a project, anything that you enjoy can be turned into content. And I think ours is a great example, right? Again, we just turned back porch conversations over a beer or a scotch into a podcast that has now been going for 2.5 years with, ding, 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 50,000 total downloads over the past couple of years. Now, that might pale in comparison to your giga popular YouTube creators or whatever. But for us, for a small podcast about what is ultimately a niche subject, even within the huge scope of Magic, is an incredible achievement. And I think that's testament to, obviously the effort. And I will say Anthony is the writer, he is the editor, he does a lot of the work behind the scenes, the event coordination and organization. I have just kind of positioned myself as the occasional writer and tech guy. And I think that's one of the things that just makes it work so well, is because Anthony is such a gifted writer. I am somehow blessed to have a couple of microphones at my house that allow us to record, and this is what it's led to. So, 50,000 downloads, if you'd have told me that a couple of years ago, I would have said you're crazy. I remember when we were celebrating our 10,000 episodes and we thought that was a huge milestone, and now we're at 50 and then maybe 100 and 1 million, and who knows where it's going to lead. Interestingly, that obviously the most common geographic locations for the podcast are in North America and in Europe, where you're going to obviously see a lot more English-speaking people. But we are a global content, right? South America, Africa, Asia, Oceania. We've seen content that we're being able to produce that is being consumed over there. Hopefully that means that there's some Cube communities, Cube groups, whatever, out there around the world that are getting some kind of value from this podcast. I really hope that they are. And again, I've loved the journey that we've been on, and I can't wait to do more of it.
We are still working on trying to get a little bit of reach in Antarctica. I would love to get the science station out there. And also the ISS is another place that I'd really like to get some Cube going on. But for now, I guess I'll take this round Earth that we're staring at on this flat screen because it's fun. I've been reading so much flat Earth stuff today. Oh, my God.
If you're interested, there's a guy called Veritas who has a wonderful YouTube channel, not to be confused with Project Veritas, but just a guy called Veritas. He was a Escape from Tarkov content producer back in the day, but now he does more varied content. And he released a video, and it was on flat Earth and that whole subject, and flat, the what do they call themselves? They've got a name, Flurfs, I think it is, the Flurfs.
Flurfers or something, yeah.
Yeah, the Flurfs and all the theory and all that. So it's 7.5 hours long. And the first time I saw this, it's like, there's no way that I'm going to sit here and watch 7.5 hours on one video about flat Earth, and I could have watched it 3 times. It was absolutely fascinating to me. So if you haven't seen that, go check it out.
I'm sitting on an airplane the other day flying to a location that I won't name because it's not fair to the state. And Delta at the time was projecting our flight, and they showed the curvature on the flight. And I heard someone grumble and go, "It would be a lot easier if we went straight." And moving on, I couldn't do it.
I mean, I'm not touching that. Anyway,
we're not doing it. All right,
let's talk about let's move on, and maybe let's talk about events. Let's start with the big one. This was one that I was not able to attend this year, but UberCubeathon 2024. I know you thought I was going to talk about CubeCon, didn't you? But UberCubeathon.
Yeah, you threw me off. You were 100% there. I was sitting here like, you totally tossed me just now.
UberCubeathon 2024. This was the maiden event that was, well, I mean, Anthony obviously just did all the work, or the majority of the work. Give us your feedback on that, both from an event organization perspective and just how the event played out.
So I've been thinking about this a lot this week because I'm going to put a soft pin in this. I am currently in the works, in talks, or planning UberCubeathon. We'll call it 2025, even though it's just another UberCubeathon. And we're looking at a soft date right now of April the 26th, 2025, which is a Saturday. We're still planning on, I'm going to say, cubes from across the country, which I will announce with a certain amount of frequency in the near future once I get everybody confirmed, etc.
Okay.
But the logistics are going to be the same. So let's go back to 2024. So it was challenging, right? I mean, people talked about it, like trying to get a number at 64. And we talked about, we in Raleigh are kind of the little big city. We joked about this before. We're not too far away from literally the fictional location of Mayberry. I mean, seriously, like Andy Griffith show, like we could just talk about that. I mean, Mount Pilot. So as far as population, we're a little big city. And there are cubers, but we do have a certain genre of Magic that does dominate the area, that probably does most. And you go to many of the LGSs in the area, and you will find the commander players. So the idea of cube, it is there, it is well, but we happen to come across this one store that we're really, really just had a vibe that appealed to me and then to Stu was the Gathering place in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, which is near Duke, near UNC, in that area. So all the colleges are kind of there, and it's really great. So it's interesting to see like that dynamic of college kids building cubes. I could see myself there had there been a cube and that idea. I didn't find Magic until 97, but if I was in college, oh my gosh, I would have gobbled up the idea of cube. But it's just really cool vibe, indie rock type of place. Got beers on tap, like lots of taps.
Karaoke.
Really cool kind of karaoke, which definitely happens, and you can expect during your final draft. So be prepared, bring your earplugs if that's something that bugs you while drafting. And congrats to both Lincoln and Tyler for surviving that in the final round. Oh my God, we talked about that. Someone singing Danny Boy, who was definitely had a few drinks prior to that singing.
Singing is a little bit of a loose way of describing it. I would say more like wailing it might be a little more accurate.
That person was on that mic. Oh
yeah.
my God. And just to watch Lincoln and Tyler leaning in, trying to do some parallax wave and just like fight out a control versus aggro strategy while having that echoing, booming in the background.
Communication's out the window at that point. Forget about it. You're just pointing at cards and hoping.
Yeah, and so I'll probably include the show notes, most likely will. Lincoln actually wrote up a nice, like, post UberCubeathon type of a thing and what he liked. I'll include that in the show notes for anybody that's not familiar with the event. I thought Lincoln did a fantastic job, and it kind of rolls into kind of something else we're going to talk about. Lincoln's event was another thing for me that personally was amazing. I went to the Capital Cube Championships and took my family with me, where we kind of stayed in the Hilton over by the Pentagon. And I got to just hang out with, like, it was Anthony from Lucky Paper Radio. It was Lincoln. It was a lot of the Lucky Paper people were there, with the exception of Andy, who felt ill during that period. I wish he was there too, but it was really nice just to kind of everybody to relax, have fun playing different cubes. And incidentally, through that whole thing, and not on purpose, I got to the top 8 table. And if you've ever felt like a zebra with spots and not with stripes, that was me. I'm sitting here going, oh my God. I felt like literally Kevin Smith from Clerks. Like, I'm not even supposed to be here today, right? Like, today's my day off. That's how I felt when I sat at that table with people like, I don't know, Zach Hill and all these people that actually know what they're doing.
Good Magic
And I was
players.
like, oh my God, get me. Yeah, like people who actually know how to play Magic the Gathering. But it was a highlight of the year as well. I like seeing these homegrown cube events, and they've popped up all over the place. And we've got people like California Cube Champs, and we've got Steel City, and we've got Boston Cube Champs that's coming up soon, and it just goes on and on. Like, Lucky Paper Radio's got an actual list of where you can find the events, and they're updating it as events are announced. So circling back to the UberCube 2025 or UberCubeathon 2025, once I get a solid date, which right now we have verbal confirmation, and I have all those different logistics in place, I will pin an actual place where you can get tickets, etc. But for now, let's just do a save the date.
Okay.
Do you agree, Stu?
I agree with that. That's pretty solid. And it was a great success. Obviously, we pitched for 64. We ended up with right around just under 50 players in total, which obviously didn't really affect a whole lot. We still had a pretty full room, a lot of successful cubes. People seem to really enjoy playing them. A very successful final table and 2 players at the end who really did battle it out. And it was a great experience. For everyone, I think, to come to a setting like that, like you mentioned, the Gathering place has got such a cool vibe. Come hang out, listen to some tunes, have a couple of drinks, play some Magic. It was pretty low-key, pretty chill. I'd never got the super-duper competitive vibe there, even though people wanted to win. They cared about winning, but it wasn't super sweaty like I've seen at some of the other events, which I do kind of like. And I understand that, this is Magic and there is a lot of very, very high competition out there, but I did kind of enjoy that UberCubeathon was just a little on the more on the casual side, so to speak. So hopefully that's the kind of vibe that will persist through to 2025, but I'm just excited to do it all over again.
Yeah, to put it in perspective, like one thing that I was kind of proud of just from the layout of the place, it's almost like C-shaped around the bar, and there's like booths. So I saw people actually like getting their own private booths so they could play their matches. It wasn't like the long table type of scenario. So it felt more relaxed, right? And
Yeah.
that's with intent. We actually wanted this to be hyper casual, even though, to the chagrin of you and I, and we're going to probably do this again, there was cash prizes involved.
There was.
And we had some real mixed feelings about this idea, but the people who got paid got paid. The top 8 got paid. They were pleased with that outcome. It just was awkward. I don't like intertwining the idea. I'll just say it, like gambling and cube aren't two things that go together. But what was interesting about that is that sentiment didn't come across the room. It was actually like legitimately a concern that I had with cash prizes. It was just something that other people have done. They normally do mats, in which we still did a mat, and that was our contribution. But the store does a lot of large RCQs. They do huge events. They work with like Extra Life and all these things. So when they can host like 5,000 player events, that's something that's very normal for them. So that was the type of culture they're adapted to. So we had to, I'll use the words make concessions, to kind of appeal to their fan base too, because we wanted to support their local event, because we are collaborating with an LGS, and it is definitely a for-profit type of situation, right? And so that was part of their thing. But they gave generously, and they did raffles, and they did prizes.
Oh, yeah.
They gave free beers. They did all kinds of things. Like, they went over the top.
They did. And I will say, no doubt the store did pretty well, because we filled it with 50-something people, right? Because you had all the competitors. You and I didn't play because we were organizing, and we had friends that came along to help out, plus judges. So there was a lot of people in that store because of this event. And everybody was, I was buying product and buying a bunch of drinks. I don't even want to think about what my tab was. Probably a couple of $100 I spent in there just myself. So obviously the store did pretty good. I want to talk about the cash prize thing is an interesting point. And I actually want to mention something that Andy Mangold, our friend from Lucky Paper, talked about a few months ago. And he said that he's not a fan, and I could not agree with him more about this. He's not a fan of this swag, right? And it's not a magic thing. It's just a general event thing, right? You pay your money, you get your ticket, but then you show up and you get all this stuff, right? And it's not a criticism, I want to say, of the organizers, because it's nice to be able to give things out to people as part of that entry fee, right? So you look at even CubeCon, we got a playmat, we got dice, we got all these other odds and ends. I don't care about any of that stuff either. I don't care about more dice. I've got millions of them. I don't care about playmats. I've got plenty of those as well. I would rather, if I'm going to pay the money, I'd rather it go towards the best event possible and just pay the winners, right? If someone wins and they do well and that's how you're advertising it, then great. If you want to have some other things like throw money behind, if it's a bar, like, hey, you can have a couple of free drinks, or maybe you buy food, something like that, then sure. But I think cash prizes is a way of rewarding people where you're not going out and buying stuff that may just end up in a landfill, right? So that could be from the entry, whatever the giveaways are, down to whatever the price structure is for your event. So you know what? I like getting cash. It's Christmas soon, and that's all I'm asking for Christmas. I don't need dice for Christmas either.
So my concern was, and that's a good subject to bring up. My concern was kind of that, what type of, I guess, environment would that create if money were on the table? And what I was pleasantly surprised to see is it didn't seem to matter. The people who got paid got paid. No one talked about it.
No.
They just played for fun. We had people that literally, a good friend of ours showed up, signed up to play, played because he loves us, and then he bounced out to go do the local beer and barbecue event that was going on down the road, just because he was supporting a local LGS. Yep. So it was pleasantly surprising to me to see that, because in the back of my mind, that was a concern. I didn't want this to turn into Casino Royale. I wanted this to be like a jovial experience that people had like a great takeaway from. And I would say overwhelming kind of just the people that we got that spoke to us and also filled out those forms that we never actually saw the data for, Jason, they said they really enjoyed kind of what we did there. So we're going to do it again, right? And we're going to try to be more representative of other cubes in the area. We've got some people that I'm talking to that have some very well-known cubes. And I'm also working, it's important to me to incorporate people from the store specifically because Chapel Hill is about 45 minutes away from our house, 50 minutes, give or takes. And, we don't see them all the time, but,
No.
A lot of them listen to the show or they love Cube. And it's a great opportunity to kind of expose them to what other cubes can be, but at the same time to showcase what they do in Chapel Hill and how they do it. So that's important. So I'm integrating that idea into it too. I could go on, and that's actually been a challenge, is like the selection process, right? Because it's just kind of me.
It was exactly. That's what I mentioned. You were basically the engine behind everything, and I think that kind of engagement that you're looking for with the store, and even you can tie that into the vibe of the event in general, what the expectations were like from the players. It may be reflective of the community in general that we have in our very, very local scene, right? So they showed up, they wasn't super sweaty, they wanted to play more for the fun aspect rather than the competition and the prize money aspect, which was, again, like you mentioned, very generous. But it was a great setting, the vibe was wonderful, it was a good time had by all. And I just think that, like I said, maybe that is a bit more reflective of the fact that we pushed it that way, that this was going to be a fun event rather than a super competitive event. Like, show up. We got these cool cubes to play. Yes, there's prize money that's out there that's available for you guys. You might win some money, but we don't want it to be about the money. It was never come and win some money. It was come and enjoy the experience. And I think that's what made it so amazing.
And we did like a round 2 free play area where I packed it up because I bought a big old box of something, and I'm just passing out like, hey, did you win? No, I lost. Oh, here, take 5 packs. It just it was just, we're having a good time with it, right? So let's kind of move on to something that you unfortunately didn't get to join us this year, and we talked about, but it was CubeCon 2024, which in my eyes was a major success. I mean, this was a big deal. And without harping on it too much, there was a major loss that did occur from our Cube community during this time. So I think if anybody's listening, a moment of silence. For that person.
Bless up.
Yeah, bless them. And we'll kind of move on past that because we don't want it to be like that. But, a major figurehead of the community. But that person helped put together something that has inspired all these small events, right? It showed us that it could be done, and that Cube as a format can bring people from all over the country, all over the world, into singular locations, and we get to meet IRL. IRL is a word that I had to learn, but you know what I mean? Like, it's not something that you would expect. Normally, you wouldn't see people from Chapel Hill, North Carolina, playing from someone from California, just because the foresight and the creativity that was involved in putting together CubeCon in itself, and all the founders of it and the people who thought that this would be an idea and realized it, they inspired these grassroots that we're seeing popping up in other countries, seeing how we have a formula that we too can follow.
Yeah.
And it's just great to have that road paved.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, obviously, Cube is a wonderful format. I'm very passionate about it. We have a podcast. It's absolutely our preferred method of playing Magic, our preferred format nowadays. I will say I'd never heard of a Cube event. Yeah, before CubeCon 2022, I had never heard of a large-scale Cube event where you're getting everybody together. And nowadays, like you say, you've got the Boston Cube Party, you've got UberCubeathon, you've got the Capital Cube event. No doubt there's going to be tons more popping up. So yeah, maybe it's a little cheesy way of saying it, but maybe those guys really did pave the way and just kind of show that there's not just that you can do it, but there's a demand for it as well. Because I remember that first CubeCon back in 2022, there was 170 people there, right? It was a small event. The next year, it's much, much larger, right? Huge events. 400, 500 people, whatever. And then larger again, obviously this year in 2024. I think, like you say, that's a great expression that it's going to pave the way. I would love to see our event kind of stay at a similar size that we've had it. I think that 64 player limit is nice for the setting that we have. But no, I think that you're going to see more of these larger events pop up. Obviously, CubeCon's in Wisconsin, up in the northwestern part of the country. We're down here in the southeast of the country. Maybe there'll be someone else who decide a larger event in the south or the east or even on the west coast. But yeah, huge props and shout out to all of the KubeCon organizers over the world. Obviously, as Anthony mentioned, a huge loss, not just for the Cube community, but for the world in general in JBro. Big thoughts and love go out to his friends and family, and long live KubeCon.
Yep, long live KubeCon. And one of the biggest honors that I got this year, besides, and I got to say it, getting the three-peat for Uber Bear's Artifact Cube was kind of neat, right? Because I worked hard on that cube. I took my lumps. I took my bruises. I got my feedback. It's bigger. It's better. And thanks to all those people giving that critical feedback, that cube, I think, is really great now. And I know I'll probably say it's not, 2 years from now, I'll say it wasn't so great now. But what I mean is it's finally in a place that I'm content with, that I'm happy with where it lies. And all of that goes thanks to people who played it at KubeCon and UberCubeathon and all these different get-togethers that we've had, our brewery type days where we get together randomly at Compass Rose Brewery, where our good friends Kirby and Shoop and others drive pretty far to come hang out with us because we love them. And it's kind of an honor to get together and just be able to have all these cubes we're working together as a group. And one of the other major honors that I had was Birds of Paradise. Bop chose the FemCube, and the FemCube had kind of a sordid history. And I won't go into great detail, but this third iteration of KubeCon, it was finally accepted. And it was accepted because there was not only some insight that needed to happen on my end as far as making the cube ready for the masses, but secondly, it was kind of how would it be received, right? I mean, a cis white male, a 47-year-old ginger sitting here in Houston, and I'm making a cube that's celebrating women, and that's could be hard for people to digest.
I think having that advocate,
I understood that from the get.
Yeah,
I understood that from the get.
You did, but now you have an advocate for the cube. You've had that review. You've got that validation that what you've done is good and is representative in an appropriate way. And like you said, it's difficult to come from the other side and sort of not come under some level of criticism just by virtue of the fact that it's going to happen, right? Regardless of whether you've got this perfect cube, there's going to be some criticism, there's going to be some commentary, there's going to be some advice. It's just all part of the natural process with that. But a great testimony to the cube. And again, huge thanks to the Birds of Paradise. They looked at your cube. They said it was great. It's now featured at KubeCon. And I've said this many times in our podcast that it's absolutely one of my favorite, if not maybe my most favorite of all of your cubes to play. I think it's incredibly balanced, just plays really fun. So yes, congrats on that. That's quite the milestone. Well done.
It was a big deal for me personally, and from our group too, who all worked so hard to get it where it was. The next one that I thought was a big achievement for you and I, we've had a lot of great guests on the show.
We have.
We've had Anthony Maddox. We've had Steve from Cubeheads.
We had Pleasant Kenobi.
That was in 2023, where I totally messed up and tried to air that during New Year's Eve, thinking that would be the best time for people to listen to podcasts. So if you haven't heard the Pleasant Kenobi episode, you get to hear Stu do Sloppity Ball Piper.
You do,
which I may include in this show just because Stu hates it so much.
You should just put a link to it in the show notes. It's definitely worth it for that. But this year was another year where it kind of shows a bit of validation to the podcast that people are agreeing to come on.
We've had Emma Partlow, who helped me out with my FemCube.
Big deal.
We had Gavin.
Gavin Verhey. Hello. That's a huge coup for us. I mean, I will say Gavin was an absolutely outrageously good guest. I mean, I don't want to ever sit here and say that we've had bad ones because we haven't. But Gavin was just so knowledgeable, so passionate. It oozes out of him when you speak to him, like how passionate he is about magic in general. He obviously loves his cube. He understands that it's got some limitations with the restrictions that he's put on, but just someone that's so excited to talk about magic and loves magic. And yeah, like you said, that was a huge coup for this show. And Gavin, again, wonderful, wonderful guest.
Another one that, is kind of a benchmark. I don't know if this is an ISO or a benchmark, but man, I got some feedback on my perspective towards Modern Horizons 3. And I can't not say it. Like, I stick by my guns. I was a little apologetic, but I think we kind of talked about at the time, kind of the consumer fatigue. And people, they took that approach of, if you didn't like it, why'd you buy it? And my response was kind of, Well, I didn't, but I did later. Actually, I will tell you later. I did come around. I did actually begin the set grew on me, but I needed it to ruminate a little bit more. And we talked about that. Like, the sticker shock was just kind of at the time, I guess, punched me right in the nose. And I had just purchased more cards and then more cards. And that is one of the things that I have learned from 2024 is to kind of step back, slow down, take a breath. I'll get what I need when I need it. Changes aren't that important. I'll just do it. And I credit a lot of that to our good friend Chris, aka Sandwich, who kind of just, when I ask him, hey, you got any of these new cards in here? No, not yet. Haven't even ordered them yet. Like, he's kind of very responsible and just kind of wants to see and really think about the placements. May does the same thing. Whereas I was kind of like, I need to get the newest, best, freshest Magic cards in this now. And realizing that I didn't really ever need to do that.
I'm going to offer another perspective on this because this just seems to be a trend with Chris, okay? I disagree that he's always just like taking a step back. Every time I talk to Chris about the latest and greatest, some new shiny, oh, did you add this really, really cool, amazing, explosive card to your cube that's skyrocketed in value, that's really expensive? He's like, yeah, I picked it up at pre-release for $3, or I got it, out of a box. Like, he's always seemed to have got the best deals on all these bangers. Like, yeah, do you have Shouldered the Apocalypse in your vintage cube? Like, yeah, I got it for like $6 back when, no one was bought or pre-order or whatever the case. I don't think it was exactly, but he always seems to have got the cards cheap, and then he waits, and then all of a sudden these bangers that go from like $20 down to 40 cents, he's like, yeah, I'm going to pick up about 90 of these for all of my cubes and my commander decks or whatever the case may be. So I think either Chris has the greatest judgment of Magic pricing, or he has a DeLorean. It's one of those two things. There's no in between. He can either travel through time, or he's just, I don't know. He's
clicking refresh on MTG Goldfish like every second while at work. I don't know.
He's got to be an MTG finance.
He's doing pretty good. I agree with that because I seem to catch him on the opposite end. I'm like, well, that was $11.
Yep. And now, look, I've done that with my commander decks. I've talked about this. I have a copy of Renin 6 that I bought when it was over $100 because it was just a modern powerhouse. I put it in a commander deck. To this day, I don't know what it's worth now. What is Renin 6? Probably $6, $7 maybe. I've never ever drawn that card. So I've paid $100 to take a piece of cardboard, put it in a sleeve, put it in a deck box, and never see it again. Do not take financial advice from me.
I will purchase it from you for 10% off a TCG low and put it in my Bobo commander deck.
You just got a one ring from me. You are not getting any more of it. Yes, okay, thank
you. So, Stu, what did you learn in 2024?
All right, so the first thing I will say is I definitely don't play as much as I would like to. And I know that's kind of a personal thing, and I'm sure there's plenty of people out there that would say the same thing. I'm sure there's plenty of people out there that think they get enough playtime or maybe too much playtime if you're really lucky. But it's just the symptoms of having a job and a family and 3 kids and, stuff I've got to get done. It's kind of a New Year's resolution for me for 2025, and I don't normally make them very much, but I will say that I am going to make much more of an effort to not just play Magic, but actually to host. My kids are a bit older now, so it's easier for me to have everyone over and just hang out in the backyard or whatever. So that's something that I learned about myself through 2024 is I haven't played as much as I should, and it's kind of become a little intrinsically linked to my mental health in a way. Like I need that time, not just from a Magic perspective, but from a social perspective. Obviously, mental health really at this time should be something that we're taking a conscious effort to speak of. So if that's something, if Magic is something that is important to you as an individual, if you need that social time, that escape, whatever it might be, try and find the time to get out there, host it, whatever you can do. If it's not Magic and if it's something else that you need to again, prioritize your mental health, get yourself in a better position, then do it. That was really, really valuable for me. So that's something I'm going to continue through 2025. Next thing, the community is definitely growing. We've seen it through the uptick in the downloads of our podcast. We've seen it through additional members of the Magic the Gathering Facebook drafting group on Facebook. That's definitely expanding. New members, coming on there every day. I see it in the Cube subreddit. I see it in Cube Discords, that there's more and more people that are engaging about Cube, that are showing interest in Cube. And it's not just Cube from a vintage Cube and a content perspective, but it's, hey, I just built my first cube, or I'm into Commander, but I'm thinking about building a cube, or I don't know anything about Cube. What can I learn about Cube from this community or that community? So obviously for us, this is very positive because we've been sending this positive message about Cube as a format. So I'm very, very excited for it to expand and for more people to get into it. Hey, the more people are cubing, the more data's out there, the more cubes that are out there, and the more people that could potentially download our podcast. Because I think Anthony's making about $6 a week from the Patreon. So you never know where
it's a whopping. It's about. Then I got to pay taxes. But yeah, so I would also say, like, from my perspective, what I've learned, I would say event planning, and I'm not going to even claim that I learned that. I would say I learned it's hard. I wouldn't be able to take on like a real event. Like I couldn't run a prom for my son. That would be a disaster.
I don't agree. That UberCubeathon was a massive success. Everybody had a blast. I would argue, not that, I don't want to badmouth anybody, but I think maybe that you were putting in effort where I would have preferred for other people to see effort. I've said to you on numerous occasions, like, if you need me to do something, I will. Obviously, you've got one grown child and I've got 3 younger ones, so my commitments are different. But I feel like you really did put in an absolutely absurd amount of time and effort with promotion and organization, and it obviously paid off well. So give yourself a pat on the back. It was just a massive success, and I'm excited to see what you can do in 2025, what we can do in 2025.
Yeah, now I'm doing copy, paste, delete, add, and it should pretty much run smoothly. Because what we didn't really talk about during the first one, this was kind of the secret. We didn't know what we were doing, but we did actually do something on Friday too with people. We met at the Morgan Street Food Hall, which is in Raleigh, North Carolina, where there was a little bit of like distance challenges, but we actually had food the night before the event. So we had people come out to like anything you want to eat, not Golden Corral. No shade towards Golden Corral, because Golden Corral is quite possibly come on now, not Golden the best, Corral. But not a sponsor, Golden Corral. But if you're listening, but it was the Morgan Street Food Hall where you could pretty much get anything you want to eat, all the beers on taps, mixed drinks, etc. Lighting a little poor, because they could do candlelight magic. They wouldn't really bother them much. But we kind of just sat at some picnic tables outside on that wonderful day. Played a lot of Magic, had a good time. We're going to run that back again this year, kind of the day prior. So it's not just the singular day for those listening. I will make a whole thing out of it. But besides event planning, another thing that I learned about going kind of towards the mechanical aspects of Magic, we talked about this recently in an episode, again, Sandwich gets full credit for this, was kind of protection and counterplays, where I had kind of mentioned before that hand disruption and counter magic was about as linear as I was thinking as far as interacting with your opponent, and how this impacts me from being a cube curator is then I decided to add in cards that allow, one-time protections, not like your mom type of effects, but something that allows you to circumvent someone trying to remove. And we talked about that during an episode. Normally that wouldn't be something that someone learned. But for me, that was something that I learned about Magic that I just hadn't thought about a great deal.
It is interesting how, you think about Commander, right? Commander being the most popular product out there, the most popular format out there. You're generally going to have this microcosm of what you're exposed to, unless you're an incredibly experienced Magic player, which I am most certainly not. I will say that for a while, when our group got together and we started playing Magic, I learned a lot about Magic in general, mechanics, timing, the whole 9 yards, from playing not just my Commander decks, but how other people played their Commander decks. And I've talked about myself being, I like to consider myself kind of a student of Magic because I read a lot about it, and it's not just Magic. I generally take that approach with anything. Content I was listening to and watching tons and tons of content about Magic really before I started playing a whole lot. So that's where all my exposure comes from. Now with Cube, all of a sudden, you sit down at a cube, it's not just one mechanic from your deck or 2 or 3 mechanics. You've got all these different archetypes and capabilities and keywords and all this kind of stuff that you've got to kind of figure out on the fly. Unless it's a cube that you're really, really familiar with, now you're thinking, man, I got to learn this stuff real fast. We kind of made the joke. We've made jokes about some people in our play group. I'm not going to name names. But, like, are you reading the card during the draft? Are you reading the flavor text? Like, why are you spending 30 minutes, like, to pass that pack? Like, let's go. But that's, it's almost necessary if you're, certainly you can imagine a newer player who's, been introduced to Magic. Hey, play this green deck. You just turn creature sideways. Good to go. And then all of a sudden it's like, what is mutate and what is storm and what is hexproof and ward and all this other kind of stuff. And it's kind of where I could make I don't want to badmouth Cube, but you could make the argument that Cube could be potentially pretty new player unfriendly if you've got something quite complicated like that and you're trying to introduce a new person. Yeah, you could say, all right, just draft the biggest creatures and turn them sideways and learn Magic in your own time. But that for me was a great learning experience as well, because I only really consume a bit of Cube content nowadays. I've cut back on a lot of that. So a lot of the learning that I'm doing is when Anthony's posting like, hey, look at these new cards that I got for my Cube, or Chris or Sam or David or whoever else is talking about Magic. So yeah, I think it's crazy. Endless possibilities, but definitely confusing as well.
Yeah. He didn't memorize 27,000.
Yeah, what's wrong with you?
What they do?
What's
wrong with you? What are you doing all weekend? So another one too that I've kind of learned, and this is May kind of shining a light on this idea. Wish you were here, May. But it was kind of providing tools to other archetypes and lines of play, which kind of goes with what I just said. Not nerfing the strongest ones, but providing the ones that are considered to be beneath the strongest tier, giving them things to prop them up instead of bringing the strongest tier down. Now, power outliers, I've accepted them as okay. We've talked about this. Power spikes, breaking the power bands, fine, with a certain amount of concessions to that idea. But at the same time, it's important to me to, instead of like, this is Land Matters package is not very good. What could I do to make this Lands Matters package better? Say in my Power Vintage Cube, where it's hard to represent that, admittedly knowing that it's not as strong as some of the other ones like we talked about. So it's just something that I think I've learned to kind of step back and look at my cubes a little bit more focused on how to balance them just from the conversations we've had, because that even just the three of us talking or interacting with people on all the different media sources that we talk to, it just serves as a platform for additional learning. So maybe someone says something on Reddit that I thought I knew, and then I find I didn't know. But of course, I don't tell them, right? I'm not going to tell them. But I still,
you're the expert
I still learn something. Yeah. They'll know when I don't know. They'll know when I don't know. But it's just something that I've learned in 2024 is to kind of refine my goals for my cube and how to balance my archetypes and strengthen kind of what matters with my cubes. So yeah, I've got one for you.
Okay,
I've got a question for you.
Sure.
And I'm going to reserve my question. My question's not going to come out today because my question's coming out soon, or my answer to my question I'm going to present is coming out soon. But what was your favorite set of 2024 for Magic? And I will not answer this right now for reasons.
So I'm going to completely play devil's advocate. This is a terrible answer. I do not have one. And the reason is very simple. I spent all of my Magic time either recording this podcast, which we do once a week, playing Magic with our group, which involves of all the cubes that we play, Chris's cubes, your cubes, whatever. And sometime, and I've actually ramped up quite a lot recently, looking over the Doom Cube. The Doom Cube is an artistic cube rather than like a set cube, as an example. So I don't really pay much, if any, attention to the sets that are released anymore. And I will say this. When I used to be very, very active in curating my commander decks, which I haven't for a very, very long time now, I would scour through every single card in every single set release to look for what could be an upgrade here, what could be an upgrade there. What's interesting about Commander, in the same way that's interesting about Cube, shout out to both formats, is that with Cube, any card can be a powerhouse. Any card can be a fabulous upgrade. Doesn't matter the rarity, doesn't really matter the power level, because little mechanical additions, right? It could be a new changeling that's available. It could be a new, type of creature that becomes available, whatever the case may be. I don't really do that anymore for any of my commander decks. I don't look at them. When I had my Grenzo Goblin or Grenzo Dungeon Warden deck that I was scouring looking for upgrades, when I was playing mono green in Modern and I was scouring every release looking for upgrades, I was making the effort to do so. But I don't really do that anymore, and I kind of feel that I just wait. This is kind of a lazy approach, but I'm just kind of waiting to see what the community gets excited about and then take a look and think, okay, that looks fun, and, take it from there. But if you ask me now, I'm not going to ask you. You said you don't want to answer it now, so that's fair. But I just kind of have, and maybe this is reflective of my taste in music as well. I don't really like artists. I do have artists that I like, but I don't like artists. If someone said to me, what's your favorite band? I have no idea what my favorite band is, but I like albums, and I certainly like songs. And that's the kind of approach that I take, that I don't, sort of focus on the wider aspect. I like to kind of zero in on something that makes me tick. So that's my long, drawn-out response to that. I don't know how that resonates with yourself or the other members of the community, but and I suppose the reason for that is I tend to look less at what synergizes, and I suppose that's because, again, the Doom Cube is a artistic-based cube rather than a synergy cube. So curators out there with very synergistic level cubes that are looking for, again, Bill with his pockets of synergy, or, even Chris with his kind of cubes, right? His Soul Tide combo cube. You're always looking for that piece that could be a little bit of an upgrade, or maybe a replacement if you want to tune down or tune up an archetype somewhere. So that's kind of the reason behind. I can kind of logic my way through why I would be so interested in sort of analyzing every single card. It's one of the reasons I think that some of these review sets, or set reviews, I should say, that are done by guys like LSV, and I know Lucky Paper like to do their set reviews and their reviews of Magic releases. Incredibly valuable as a
Steve, man. We've got all these people. Usman. We got to give all these shout outs. Usman, all these people that have worked so hard.
I've only got so much time. There's only so much time.
Yeah.
But so many people in the community content creation space that do such a great job of really highlighting what they like, what works well in their cube, that can inspire other curators. So big shout out to them. But yeah, that's I call it lazy answer because I've been waffling on for about 20 minutes. But, I just kind of find myself being a little more open to what's out there.
So I've got one for you as we close out here, and this one's very important. This is adding to your 2025 resolutions.
Okay. Anthony, stop. I'm not going through this again, but I'll say it for the record. Yes, I dislike aggro. Okay, I know I know that's gonna be. Just let me have my hatred. Let me have my salt. I've been beaten by 3-2s more times than I can shake a stick at in 2024. That's going to be my next 2025 resolution, is I will lose less to these darn aggro decks. And I'm assuming that was your question. If it's not, then please go ahead. But there you go.
No, we've got your solution from a listener, and this is going to be the actual, you're forced upon 2025 resolution. Finish the damn Doom Cube. I've got a listener that has given you a amazing idea. You ready to hear this?
Shoot.
This is sick. You're going to like it.
All right.
This is from Jeff Stumpo. For the Doom Cube, tell Stu I said hi. Give everyone cheat codes. I'm not sure how to make it so you can't ever get hit, but what if you guaranteed ID God, IDGOD, the code, in the form of heroic intervention once per game? That is sick.
That is a pretty cool idea. That's idea.
Sick.
Yeah,
that's sick.
I like the cheat codes idea. That's pretty interesting. Ooh, that's got me thinking.
That's spice. Now we have to wait 3 more years while you get all the cheat codes.
All right.
compiled.
First of all, to Jeff, thank you very much for the suggestion. That is really cool. So one of the earlier iterations there's been many sort of decisions that I've made as far as the direction. Originally, way back when I first started designing this cube, it was going to be a 1 player plays as Doom Guy and the other 3 players play as the monsters from hell. And I really did seriously consider a pre-built deck for the Doom Guy player. and then the draft for 3 other players. I ultimately decided I didn't think that would be very fun for the Doom Guy player, as much fun as it might be to kind of be the Kingmaker or the Kingslayer, the arch enemy, whatever. But I have also gone through iterations of the cube where each player starts with food, to represent health packs or various other little mechanics that are found in Doom. So I definitely do like the idea that there's some kind of outside of the game piece that can come in and influence. And I will say this, I actually worked on the Doom Cube. I've been working on it quite a bit recently, and I was really, really close to the 180 number that I'd earmarked as this is what I want the cube to be. So I went in there, I worked on it a bunch, and now I'm down to like 140 cards because I just ripped the Band-Aid off and got rid of a ton of cards that were just power level, absolute mismatches, cards that I just didn't feel like they belong there. And I've really felt like this has been the first time that I've actually done that with this cube. It's been very linear in the adding cards and the odd removal here or there, but this is the first time I've really stripped out a lot of the cards that are in there.
Apparently, a lot of people want to see the completion of the Doom Cube because I have another one. All right. This is from our YouTube. I don't know if you guys know, but UberCube has a YouTube.
We do.
So if you're looking for something to listen to it, it's not like filled with a lot of things, but it does have our episodes on it. This is from...
Do you have all of them? Because I do plan on putting all of them on there. If they're not there already, we'll make this conversation.
They are all here, yes.
Okay,
all the
good.
episodes except for one. One had a failure, but doesn't matter. Colin Drew, and I think I said that right, 8095... said, Doom, consider a solitaire type format with a hell deck, like a beefed up Theros solo deck, behaves a certain way. Kind of like what I said, a horde type deck, where you've got like, the way I would kind of say it, but this individual saying combined with a roguelike approach of drafting as you play from another deck. This would give the constant movement feel of Doom with replayability and ability to adapt to different challenges on the fly. I think it's neat. So like, what they're saying is like I joked about like gates. You could have gates to open up this deck. This deck is your hell gate. And then you have kind of a horde / roguelike type deck that you're playing against. Because you talked about Doom Guy. You could switch it around so the other players are Doom Guy or the individual's Doom Guy versus the deck. I know there's different feels, different takes you could do on this idea. And Absolutely. Thank you, Colin DeRue.
Yes, thank you, Colin.
I think I said that right. If I didn't, I apologize.
Colin. So I did have, so actually had a bit of a drawing of inspiration from Dan. The first time I saw Dan, I was not familiar with this format. All of a sudden I look and there's 2 people sitting across from each other playing this mono blue each side deck, and there's a stack of cards and they're all blue, and I'm like, what the heck's going on here? But I did kind of draw a bit of inspiration from that, thinking how cool would it be if you had Doom Guy not even drafting, just picking cards from one deck, and then the other 3 players representing the horde, if you will, right? The monsters from hell, and they would pick from one deck, and then there was some kind of mechanic where you could have maybe one player who goes off the defense a little bit, right? Who goes another way and looks for a key card so you can unlock another deck. Maybe you even had all 4 players draft and all 4 players are representing Doom Guy, and then you've got or 3 players representing Doom Guy, and then you've got one person who's representing the monsters from hell, and then they're kind of doing the same thing where, maybe the 2 of the players, maybe 2 of the players are attacking the monsters, one player's off looking for key cards or ammo or health, something along those lines. Again, it really does go to show that the possibilities are so endless and limitless for a cube. Like I could spend 50 years designing a million iterations of this cube with all kinds of different mechanics and play styles and so on and so forth. One day it will end, and it will end with a 360, but the 180 will come first, and I hope to finish it by the end of 25, sorry.
Damn it, finish the cube. That's what the listeners are saying.
It's coming.
All right, so we want to say happy holidays to everyone. Thank you for supporting the show. Happy holidays. Thank you for all the love and support and putting up with us and listening. This is coming from our hearts, and myself, Absolutely. May, Stu, Chris, Christian, Sam, Bill, Nathan. I could keep listing because our pack is pretty huge. The Wolf Pack is pretty large in Raleigh, North Carolina. But I wanted to say thank you to everyone, man. I mean, from the bottom of our hearts, I hope that each one of you have a wonderful holiday. Everybody celebrates in their own way and just finds peace, right? That's what we're looking for. Absolutely. And that 2025 means just more cube, more happiness for everybody. And, we're just going to keep plugging along with our episodes and hope you still listen.
Keeping them rolling.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Keeping them rolling.
All right, first of all, as always, want to give a huge shout out to all of our Patreons, to Chris Fitzgerald, Timber Dragon, Brian Christensen, Keaton Schultz, Lord Justice, Chris Singer, Nick Lapointe, Preston, and Sam McKenna. A big holiday thank you to all of you guys for the ongoing support. It really does mean a lot to us here at UberCube. Help keeps the light on. And again, a huge thank you for all of your support through 2024. And we'll thank you and hope for your continued support through 2025. As always, if you want to support the show, you can also use our inkedgaming.com/UberCube affiliate link. Go check them out for playmats, dice bags, mouse pads, all kind of custom and large volume products available. If you want to get in on the discussion, you can check out the MTGFB Facebook drafting page at facebook.com/groups/MTGcube. You can find us at Twitter. We are at UberCubeMTGPod. You can also reach us via email. If you've got a longer question or comment about your cube, someone else's cube, about an episode, you can find us at ubercubemtgpodcast@gmail.com. As always, we've got a link to the Discord in the show notes, as well as on all of our socials. Come hang out, check out all the channels. We've got Cube Help, we've got new card discussion, we've got the Deck Bows channel, big favorite of mine. And again, a big thank you to all of our patrons at patreon.com/ubercube for all the ongoing support. A big, happy, and safe 2024. Enjoy the holidays, however you celebrate it. We wish you guys all the best, and we look forward to seeing you all again in 2025. And with that, we're going to say what we always...
We'll see you in January 2025, and we're going to say, as I cut off Stu so rudely, and I love him to death, I apologize, Happy
Cubing
Holidays! Cubing. There you go. So who was the better villain from the Die Hard series? Was it Hans Gruber or was it Simon Gruber? Simon Says.
So this is a tough one for me because I love Jeremy Irons as an actor. I love Alan Rickman. Rest in peace. I think that Alan Rickman is the more iconic villain because of the lines, because of his delivery, because it's the original movie, and it's just so it's an amazing movie, right? Outside of the Christmas thing. But Die Hard with a Vengeance is also a big favorite of mine. I really dislike Die Hard 2, but I thought Die Hard with a Vengeance was absolutely incredible. So I think from a plot and kind of fun perspective, I think that you could maybe argue that it's Simon, but it's not. It's Hans.
But so Die Hard 2 continued the Christmas film kind of series going, the thematic idea, right?
Yeah.
Whereas the other one just jumped off the deep end, and they went to, I guess it started out with they're in Harlem, and then there's bombs, and it's pretty nuts. But I think, yeah, I'm gonna lean towards the original. The Nakatomi Tower was just personally my favorite. I don't know. I do, in fact, did you ever watch like the behind the scenes where that wasn't actually filmed there? It was filmed in California.
Yes.
And that Nakatomi Tower is like right there in near Los Angeles.
Oh, yeah.
Near Hollywood. It's
yeah.
pretty nuts.
Yeah. But, but a great movie. But two great movies. I think Die Hard is the more iconic. It is probably, I think you could argue, a better movie. But I think Die Hard with a Vengeance stands out. Just a different kind. It's like Alien versus Aliens, right? Aliens is a really good movie. But Alien is the classic. It's got the tension. It's got all those elements that just make for such a
now you're going to make me like
film.
part 3 more because it's got Samuel Jackson in it. Clearly the third, the sequels are better. That's where we're going to end this year.
All right.
And other than that,
it right there.
I love you, Stu.
Love you.
But Die Hard, a Christmas film. Bye.